Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Allan Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Allan Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. You can listen on air, live, or online at iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, and on our own award-winning WHPC app. Also, podcasts of the show are also available. Herbally Yours continues to bring you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are bringing on board Allan Misner from 40fitness.com, and that's 40, the number, plus fitness.com. And he is a fitness trainer who faced many challenges in life, including excess weight, and took him 8 years to discover the missing element to conquer that problem. Today, he is a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer, a Precision Nutrition Level 1 coach, and a Functional Aging Institute certified functional aging specialist. And he has lots and lots of certifications. And let's bring on board Allan Misner. So thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's go back in time at Allan, a little boy. Did you have any concept that you would wind up focusing on being a fitness trainer?
No, at first I wanted to be an astronaut, and I was pretty serious about that. I actually went to college. When I first started college, I majored in physics, and the space shuttle blew up the first time. And what I realized was they had just killed a civilian, and as a result, my opportunity to make it into any kind of space program had just sort of poof with that traily little, smokestack that we watched as it over and over and over again on the TV. So no, I went into corporate and was actually really good at it, good at accounting, good at corporate, and worked my way up and ended up in a place I just didn't recognize myself.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I was very successful at my job, but I was unsuccessful at just about everything else we do. So my fitness was horrible. My health was horrible. I was miserable in my relationships. Just every other aspect of my life was terrible. And I found myself at 39 years old, highly successful at my career, but just really miserable.
And you also have a daughter, I know through your notes, that also is interested in health and wellness.
Yeah. It wasn't right then because at that point she was a little younger, but I was working on trying to fix myself, and I'd been on this journey for about 8 years and just really couldn't get anything to click. And I had a daughter who was getting into fitness. She was a level 1 CrossFit coach, and just listening to her excitement reminded me of who I was when I was her age. And so it was really, I'm not going to say it made it more difficult, but it sort of put that rub on it, where you just feel really uncomfortable and terrible. And so it really kind of put a little bit of pressure on me. And I think one of the days that has all started to come together for me was when she said, "Daddy, I want you to come watch me do this CrossFit competition." And I was thinking to myself, I should be doing that CrossFit competition with her. I don't want to be a spectator in her life. I want to be a participant. And that kind of hit me in the gut of why am I not that guy, the guy I thought I would be when I grew up, and so that really kind of started my brain churning on, okay, why am I successful in my career? Why was I able to do these other really hard things, but I can't seem to get my arms around this? And that's when it hit me. I had never really committed to it. I'd wanted to lose weight. I'd wanted to get more fit. I'd even made efforts at it, but I really hadn't committed to it the way I had for these other things. And when you commit to something, really commit to something, it's not that it makes it easier, but it makes it better when you're doing the hard things. It makes it easier. It does make it easier when you start to struggle because you know you're committed to get this done. You're just willing to work that much harder to figure out what's not going right. And you can think about it in terms of a relationship. When we get married, we're going to go through hard times. We're going to go through different things. We work it out. We just work it out because we're committed to that relationship. And that's what I really needed to do, was to commit to myself, to go back to self-love, self-compassion, and those kind of things that grow you and make you better. And once I did that, I'm not going to say that it made things easier, but it definitely lit a fire under me and kept me motivated to do the changes I needed to do.
Well, you shared that you wound up losing at some point 66 pounds, which is pretty significant. So was that something that then stayed off? So you had a whole different body, or was that one of those yo-yo effects that so many people experience?
This one was not a yo-yo, not in that way. I didn't stay that lean, although I can tell you that I weigh the same weight right now as I did when I completed that Tough Mudder. So, there is that. But what I did was I committed to participate in my daughter's life, and she was doing these mud runs. So I did.
Wait, I want to stop you 1 minute because not everyone knows what that is. Like I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
What is that?
And that's what I was going to say. So basically, a mud run is obviously mud. It's an obstacle course. It's a race. And so we signed up for a 5K, which is a little over 3 miles. And there were probably a dozen obstacles. So it's not a whole lot of running. It's run to the next obstacle, try the obstacle, and then move to the next one. And I did one of those, but my daughter with her friend ran off and left us. And so I was like, okay, I'm just, I'm not as fit as I need to be, but I'm going to be. And so that's when I told my daughter, I said, let's sign up for a Tough Mudder. Now, a Tough Mudder, in contrast, is 12 and a half to 13 miles and has 25 obstacles. At the time, it was probably the hardest civilian obstacle course there was. So I committed to do that, and I gave myself 8 months to get ready for it. And that's when I really lost the weight, got myself fit, because with a CrossFit level 1 daughter, I didn't want her to have to wait on me. I didn't want her to have to help me. I literally wanted to participate with her, and I wanted to enjoy it, and I wanted to finish with her. And so I trained really hard. I took care of myself with my food. I took care of myself with my sleep. I was in a pretty stressful job, but I managed that as best I could. And I was able to lose 66 pounds. And so I dropped down. I was at 205 when I did this Tough Mudder with my daughter, and crossing the finish line, holding her hand, is one of the most special moments. I remember when she was born and she wrapped her hand around my finger. I remember walking her now down the aisle when she got married last year, and this Tough Mudder, finishing with her, holding her hand. Those are 3 of the top moments of my life. And that's why I say to folks, when you want to make a change, make it emotional, make it important. Just losing some weight isn't really going to get you there. But if you're doing it to be the person that you're meant to be, like I said, I wanted to be a participant in my daughter's life and not just a spectator. But if you start thinking about your whole life cycle and where you want to end up, I want to be independent. I want to be strong. I want to be capable. I want to do all these things as I get older. And if I'm not doing the right things today, I'm setting myself up for failure as I age. And so for the things I look to do in my life, I'm always looking at what is fitness to me? What does it mean for me to be the person I need to be? So can I be there for my wife? Can I be there for our kids? Can I be there for the people in my family that matter? And can I stay independent so they're not taking care of me? So it's really this concept of being a whole person for yourself and the people around you.
Well, that's a good intro, and I want to remind our listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Allan Misner, and he is a fitness trainer. You can find him at 40plusfitness.com. And you just described to us, Allan, sort of the beginning of your journey into fitness. And I think it's so true. I've written many books. One is called Weight Loss, the Alternative Medicine Definitive Guide. And very much of what I focus on there is the fact that just getting that scale to go down in terms of pounds can never usually work as an ongoing motivation. It's really about self-imagining, let's say, being healthy, or like you said, being able to participate in life in more intense ways. And the weight loss really is secondary.
Yes, it's effectively a byproduct, a side effect of getting healthy. If we're giving our body what it needs, our body responds by giving us what we need. So if we're moving the way we're supposed to move, and we're eating the way we're supposed to eat, and we're managing stress the way we're supposed to do, and we're getting good sleep, all of that sends a signal to our body that we're safe. We're in a good place. And there's no real reason to hold on to this excess body fat. If you think about it from a primal perspective, if you could imagine being chased by, bears and out hunting and doing things, in a normal sense, we would be out all the time doing our normal things, feeding ourselves. And when we're in a good place, meaning there's plenty of food, we're safe, our body's going to respond to that. Now, as we start to go into a winter where there's going to be less food and there's maybe there's some predators out there, our body's going to respond differently. So if you're hiding in your cave every day, all your body knows is for some reason you're not moving. There must be something wrong. And as a result, your body is going to respond by holding on to that body fat, because we don't know when we're going to eat again. We don't know when we're going to get good quality food. And for one reason or another, you're not getting out of your cave and moving around the way you normally do. Something's wrong. Whereas if you're out and about doing normal movement patterns, you're lifting a little bit of resistance training, you're out and about, doing things, and you're eating good quality food, now you're signaling to your body, we're in a place of abundance. We have everything we need. We're safe. And then your body says, I don't need this excess body fat anymore. And it's able to shed it.
So I know you have really looked into this deeply. What is functional fitness?
Functional fitness, the way I like to define it is being fit for tasks. So, there's the CrossFit, which is great. If you love CrossFit, by all means, it's a great way to keep yourself motivated and get out in a group environment. Just be smart about it.
So wait a minute, what is CrossFit?
Okay. CrossFit is a type of exercise where they're doing all kinds of different things. They're lifting weights, they're running, they're jumping, they're doing toes to bar. They do all kinds of interesting quality movements. The problem with CrossFit is a lot of people injure themselves because they just get a little overeager. They push themselves a little too hard. It's just too easy to do because it's a very dynamic, with weights, moving program. So for a lot of people, it's not really appropriate. But the reason I bring it up is because CrossFit has this competition every year with those professional athletes coming in, and they bill it out as being the fittest person on earth. So there's a fittest man, fittest woman, and now they have the master's levels and all that. And that's great. These folks look like the athletes, professional athletes. For most of us, we don't need to be professional athletes. So when you look at fitness, you think, well, I've got to have the six pack and I've got to be able to lift all this weight and I've got to be able to do all these things. The true answer is, do you really? And the answer is no. You need to be fit for tasks. So let's say I want to go on a trip with a friend and go for a hike. We're going to go over to the mountains. We're going to do some hiking, maybe do the Appalachian Trail for a little bit. So what do I need to be able to do? Well, I need to be able to lift and carry my pack. I need to be able to put it in an overhead bin on an airplane. I need the stamina to be able to do the hike. And that's about it. So fit for task is being fit, having fitness for the things you like to do. So if you like to play tennis, it's being fit to play tennis. If you like to run, then it's having a fitness level where you can run the races that you want to run and feel good about them and not hurt yourself. So functional fitness is just being able to do the day-to-day tasks. And I'll give you an example.
Let's step it down a little bit even. What about for the non-athlete? Just in terms of what you need to do, maybe walk around the block. It doesn't have to be a high level of attainment.
Right. It doesn't. You're right. And so it can be something as simple as, okay, you just went to the grocery store and you have your groceries, and now you have to lift them up out of the car and carry them inside. Now that evening you had a jar of pickles you bought and you want to be able to open that jar of pickles. Well, if you don't have the grip strength to open the pickles, then maybe you're not having pickles that night. And so it's really just thinking about in terms of living how you want to live. And I'll tell you a little story. My grandfather loved golf. He bought a house on the golf course. He played almost every day. He loved golf. I was visiting him. He was about 80 years old, and we're riding around in a golf cart. And the guys were going out to play golf. And I said, well, you're going out with them? And he said, no, I had to quit playing. And I'm like, well, why would you quit playing golf? He's like, my balance was off, and I just didn't have the balance to keep playing. So I said, well, do you want to go to the driving range and just hit a few balls? He's like, no, I really don't feel comfortable and confident to be able to hit golf balls. So he lost golf. Now, he's 80, so you're like, okay, well, that's fine. He lived to age 95, which means the last 15 years of his life, he didn't get to play golf. But it gets worse. It got to a point where he couldn't move around quickly enough and take care of himself, so he had to move into a home. And the last time I saw him, he was about 90 years old. And I saw him for a couple hours, and that was it. And then I was going to go to try to visit him again, and he didn't want to see anybody. And the reason he didn't want to see anybody was he couldn't take care of himself. So if he was sitting and he had to go to the bathroom, he might not make it to the bathroom. And therefore he had a mess. And he did not want anyone to witness that. He did not want that to be what people thought about him. So for the last 5 years of his life, I never saw him. So, well,
that's a sad story, but very common.
It is. And so when I tell someone, it's like when I look at functional fitness, it means that I'm able to wipe my own butt when I'm 105. You know, it's like if I live a long, healthy life, I'm going to be able to do more and enjoy my life more. And I'm not going to have to give up things that I love. So I did a Tough Mudder with my daughter. I don't know what my grandchildren are going to be doing because we didn't have that stuff when we were growing up. So they came up with Tough Mudders. I'm like, okay, I don't know what they're going to be doing in 15, 20 years, but I'm going to be the crazy 70-year-old out there doing it with my grandkids. I'm not going to be the grandparent sitting on the couch looking down at the kids playing on the floor. I'm going to be grandpa on the floor playing with the kids. And so when you think about how you want to live your life for the rest of your life, that's where functional fitness comes in, being fit for task.
So how do people look into that more? Like you said, at different life stages and also with different people. You know, my son, who is a personal trainer, and he's going to be 50. Oh, my God. He's totally ripped, and he's going to be 50. And yet a lot of people in their 20s are nowhere near in his kind of condition. So it's not always just age specific.
No, it's not. And unfortunately, we have such an abundant access to processed foods and everything else. And so everything's been made so much easier that, you know, you don't have to go anywhere. Literally, someone lived in their house for a whole year and never left their house because everything they wanted, they could order online and have it delivered. So they never had to leave their house. And so in an environment where we stop moving and we stop taking care of ourselves, our body wonders, why are we stuck in a cave? What's out there that's so dangerous? Why do we keep eating this crappy food? I'm not getting the nutrition I need. We must have a problem with the food. Therefore, I need to hold on to this body weight. And so it just makes it very difficult if we're not doing the right things for our body to respond in a positive way. So it responds by hoarding fat, making us bigger, making us more sedentary. As you get bigger, it's easier to be less active. And so it's taking those little baby steps, those little nudges forward of saying, okay, I'm going to change myself. And here's why. You have a deep, compelling why, and you start making little changes. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people that are in their 50s and 60s that are ripped and healthy. And there's a lot of people who are not, even down as low as their teens and 20s. But here's the magic, and here's the wonderful news. If you take a next breath, you can do something positive for your health and fitness. And it can be just as simple as having positive thoughts. It can be expressing gratitude. It can be making sure that your next meal is a better one, or moving just a little bit more today than you did yesterday. And so it's you can take these little steps to move yourself towards a better, healthy you, but you got to take that first step.
So that's the first step, by making that commitment to self. And it's interesting that you're talking about people being stuck inside all the time. Certainly with the recent pandemic, people have been more stuck inside than ever. Yeah. However, I also found for myself personally, it actually got easier to work out because there's so much available online in terms of coaching, in terms of classes. So I would say I actually exercise more. I used to have to make time. I walk every day. First of all, I'm an exercise nut. So I walk 3 miles every single day, and I lift weights, and I do yoga. My whole life. I'm in my mid-70s. I've been doing that since I'm a child. So that's just part of my habit. But I used to, let's say, go to yoga classes a couple times a week. And then with the pandemic, they all closed down. But then they all shifted to be available online. So I find it's even better. I love doing it in my house.
Yeah. I was an online personal trainer before it was cool. I started doing this in 2015. And at that time, there was nothing like this. And that was what my struggle was. I was traveling all the time for work, and I was like, I can't really make classes. I can't really meet a trainer at the gym, but I want to do this. And so that's where when I was going through my 8 years of struggle, part of it was these certifications. I said, well, if I can't find a trainer, I can't find someone to help me, I need to help myself. And so I started doing these certifications really just for myself. And this wasn't available. So when I got through my, I guess you can call it a transformation, but when I made my changes and afterwards people were asking me about it, because you don't just drop 66 pounds in basically 8 months and people not notice. So I said, well, why is there nothing out there? There were no podcasts for people over 40. There were no online trainers. The only online trainers I knew about at that point were the ones that really focused on contest prep for bodybuilders. So if you wanted to be a bodybuilder and you were trying to do some contest prep, there were coaches online. Or if you were a power lifter or something like that, there were a few online. But there weren't that many, and there weren't any for anyone that would be over 40 that has to train just a little bit differently. So that's why I started the podcast, the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. And then that's why I started training people online at 40 Plus Fitness. And that was my whole practice. I'm happy to say there are a lot more people out there. And obviously COVID forced a lot of in-person trainers to move their business online, which is good. But don't poo-poo the idea that meeting people and having a class and having the motivation of the social engagement with people at a yoga class or at a fitness class or a walking or running group, there's a lot of value in that social connection. It's very motivating for a lot of people to know that other people are there and you're going to get to see them again and train with them.
Right. So that's the social aspect, which, of course, when you're only participating that way online, you lose. But where should someone start? I mean, how do you move towards eating healthier, having exercise into your life every day? It sounds taboo, but some people have to start at the beginning.
Yes, and you should. I mean, that's one of the key things about this. It's one of the things I struggled with. I thought I was supposed to be this super athlete because I was when I was younger. And every time I tried to do something that was too aggressive, my body responded by telling me no. And so I, came close to hurting myself several times. And so what you want to do is just really assess where you are and do a little bit more. So, you go for a walk. How do you feel? You walk up a flight of stairs. How do you feel? Now just do a little bit more. I'll give you an example of a client that was really struggling. She told me when we first started, she said, I walk to my car in the morning and I'm already winded. Just leaving from my house to walk out to my carport to get in my car, I'm already winded. And I said, okay, here's what you do. Tomorrow, walk out to your car and walk around it one time, and then you can drive to work. And she did that for a few days, and I asked her about it. She said it was hard, but I was able to do it. I said, okay, now do 2 laps. And just those little bits of extra kind of got her body to respond and improve, which is one of the awesome things about the human body is it's one of the few machines that when you work it, it actually gets better. And so within a couple of weeks, she was walking around the neighborhood. And so it's just those little gentle nudges, just a little bit more. If you get winded walking up the stairs, well, sometimes try walking up them and walk all the way back down and walk back up. And that's going to be really hard, but it's going to help train your body that you need to do more. And when your body gets that stimulus of, oh, a little bit more, okay, I get a little bit stronger. I build a little bit more endurance. And then just be thinking about what you need for the things that you're going to want. So if I want to open that jar of pickles when I'm in my 80s and 90s, I'm going to need grip strength. So making sure that I'm carrying things or doing things that are helping me maintain grip strength are going to be important. If I want to have the stamina to go do things with my grandkids, like take them to the zoo and not lose them, not have to sit on the bench and wait for them, I'm going to have to be able to move around a little bit. So I need to build the stamina or keep the stamina to be able to do that.
Well, those are wonderful, wonderful suggestions. Tell us about your podcast, the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast.
I've been doing it now for about 7.5 years. So it was the first, and now it's the biggest podcast in the health and fitness field for people over the age of 40. I bring on guest experts that I interview, and in almost all cases, they've written a book, and I'm one of the few podcasters. I'm going to actually read their book before I bring them on the show. So we're going to have a really valuable conversation that's going to leave you with some great actions. And then again, if you like and resonate with the author, you can order their book. And so that airs once a week. Actually, episode 585 went live today. So I've done quite a few of these, not quite as many as you have, Ellen. But
well, like when you said that, I said, you know what? I wonder how many I have done since 1987, 3 shows a week. I never added them up. That's great.
Yeah, a lot more than 585, I'm sure.
That's okay. That's admirable. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And the name of your podcast is?
40 Plus Fitness Podcast.
That sounds easy to find. So I want to thank you so much for being our guest today.
No, thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us once again next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.